This November, New Jersey voters have a rare choice, electing a governor who's never served in the office before. Will the thought that goes into that vote inform the votes for our state legislative seats? Every Senate and Assembly seat is at stake. Does untested leadership at the helm require seasoned lawmakers at the rudder? Or is this a launch point for sweeping change and new faces? Meet Ray Baker of Toms River, one of the many Shore Democrats hoping to bring his ideas to the State Assembly and representing District 10, composed of the coastline from Bayhead right through Seaside Heights and inland through Toms River, Island Heights, and Manchester. Ray has the endorsement of the American Federation of Teachers in New Jersey. You can learn about him through his Facebook page and through votesmart.org, which has a series of specific questions of which he's asked. Ray, you're an individual who brings with you a varied amount of experience. You're a retired pharmacist. You have traveled the world. And you have traveled the nation. You've lived in far corners of the earth and brought all that experience back with you. What is it that brings you to this point that says, I need to make a difference in the state legislature?
Well, I've lived in 3 countries and worked for 4 governments. In the government of Saudi Arabia, the government of the United Arab Emirates, the government of Pennsylvania, and the government of Missouri, indirectly as a contractor doing some work for each of these 4 governments. I found the 4 governments to be more similar than dissimilar. Certainly the government of Saudi Arabia isn't on its face all that similar to the government of Pennsylvania. But what I see is that governments are trying to do something very useful, but because of, mostly as I see, short-term planning and not looking long enough at the problem, they don't get the result that they paid for. It goes on. I can give you one example. I was in the United Arab Emirates and we talked the folks in Holland to send us some medicine for this young child that we needed, and very expensive medicine. We didn't have it in the budget to buy it, but the good folks in Holland sent us a dose on an airplane. It sat in customs for it sat in customs at that time, the first time, for 2 weeks, and of course by the time it got to us, it was fried in the heat of the United Arab Emirates. But the good folks in Holland were good enough to send us another dose, and it happened again. And on the 3rd dose, I showed up at the arrival of the flight myself. Quite surprising to the people there, because pharmacists are some kind of celebrities in the Middle East, and they dusted off the chair and hollered that there was a pharmacist there, Henna Sadaliya, and I got the dose. But there was a lot of waste. Thousands and thousands of dollars on that one case. Well, we have similar situations here, and they had similar situations in Pennsylvania. At this time, when I first started this, you have to turn in a petition in Trenton for the people that say you ought to run for office. So you have to turn in this petition after you get some people to sign it. So I went up there to Trenton, and I saw a big building with boarded up windows. I don't remember the count, but I think there were 13. It could be 10. A lot of huge windows boarded up. And I asked somebody, what building is that? And they said, it's the state capitol. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you don't want to be rude, so thank you very much. But I asked someone else. And they said, it's the state capitol. I had to come back a couple of days later, and I brought a camera. and if you go to Ray Baker for assemblynewjersey.net, you'll see pictures of the boarded up windows of the state capitol.
Okay, but you understand that's a renovation project.
I understand that, but this is before the renovation was approved. It was before they started it. Mm-hmm. It was boarded up because the windows aren't functioning. Mm-hmm. And the question is, why? Did they think that the windows were always going to last and they didn't need maintenance? In my campaign literature, I have a thing about the next time you drive under a rusty bridge, did somebody think when they built it that it wasn't going to rust? The point is that with careful planning and with something like a 20 or 30-year mortgage that has firm legal ground, the state could make some planning for things that they know they're going to have to do in the future. And don't build a road if you can't afford to repave it when it needs repaving. Just don't do that. And I'm a Democrat. I'm concerned about kids that are hungry. There are a lot of hungry kids. A lot of hungry kids. In this state and around the country, and we argue about school lunches? School lunches, excuse me? What about the other lunches? Shouldn't every child have some food in their tummy? But if we waste our money by bad planning, we're not going to have the small amount of money that we need to buy a meal for the hungry child. So I'm very concerned about the money. I have a thing called Taxes 123 if you go to my website, but the Taxes 123 is about, there was a question in the Asbury Park Press, and they said everybody that is going to run for an office in Trenton should tell the people that they want to support them and vote for them exactly what is it you're going to do about property taxes. Everybody's concerned about property taxes. So everybody should say specifically. So I sat down to the computer, sent them an email. It was braggadocio, but I said at the end, if somebody says something better, publish that. Well, after a day, they published mine. Taxes 123, and what I said essentially is no gimmicks, lots of gimmicks already and more, and you can read them every day. Secondly, I said, you need to look at the taxes about the taxes and the difference between New Jersey and other states. Why are our taxes higher? Our taxes are higher because we have townships and boroughs. And then they've been talking about this in New Jersey for at least, that I know of, 50 years, maybe longer. And it's still in the newspaper. People are still talking about the townships need to consolidate. If something doesn't happen after 50 years, Schwarzkopf had this great saying, that dog won't hunt. I think he said, that dog don't hunt. Whichever, that dog don't hunt. It ain't going to happen. But we have a perfect model for how to cure the problem. The model is libraries. The libraries are run by the counties. So yes, this one hotshot paid the big bucks, not very big, but the bigger bucks to run the libraries. 21 guys, okay, or ladies, as the case may be, around the state that get the big bucks. Not 275 or whatever the larger number is. Well, the state legislature can and should and possibly will begin to consolidate the functions so they can take another function away from the counties and boroughs, whatever, and assign it away from the boroughs and townships, whatever, and assign it to the counties. So you can't consolidate the counties, you can't consolidate the townships and the boroughs necessarily, but you can consolidate the functions and move the money.
Okay.
So, and
Let
then
me stop you right there.
Yes.
How does this change the economic structure? All you're doing is moving the responsibility to another area, which is going to mean a higher set of priorities and a greater workload, which is going to equate to a higher rate of pay and probably bloated county government. So what's your fix?
it goes back to it that it is true that the guy that runs the school system is going to make the big bucks. But right now we have 275 of those guys. I don't want to eliminate any teaching jobs, but 275 guys running the schools is a lot more expensive than 21 guys running the schools and the various people that go with them. In one district in this county, one school system has hired a lawyer for next year. They're going to pay the lawyer $600,000, plus if he does any work, $350 an hour plus copies. So what's the deal? This is the kind of thing that happens when you have all of these various jurisdictions. So leave the township alone, let them have the deeds and the tradition and so on. But the money, let's gradually move from libraries to maybe fire, to maybe police, and eventually to teachers, and get the money under control. It's what other states do, it's what's hurting us.
So you're in favor of eliminating certain branches of local government, certain functions of local government?
Functions. Move the functions to the counties and save the money. And then we're going to have enough money to feed the kids.
Okay. Does that not put people out of work?
Yes, and there's no question that the higher executives, okay, at the top of the organization, this can happen. But these people, the people supposedly that are in charge, for example, of the fire departments, okay, if a man is a chief of the fire department, okay, and then we don't need so many chiefs. Well, he's a fireman. He can work for the fire department just like anybody else. So hopefully choose the best of the chiefs and then gradually just move them. And none of this needs to be done in a way. None of this needs to be done overnight. It can be done by attrition. It can be done by gradual change. But right now, for the last 50 years, all we've done is spend more and more money. I'm suggesting we spend gradually less and less and less. Mm-hmm. And this is doable. This is something that the state legislature and the government can do. The alternative is, well, let's just raise the taxes on the rich people. If you own a house and you have to pay 5% tax, it means that every 20 years you've got to pay for the house again and send the money to the government. Well, everybody does that kind of, okay? 5 or 4 or 3 or whatever. Well, move it to 15. What are you going to do then? The percent of the money that is for taxes we need to try to make it not be a larger percent of just try to take and spend the money wisely. Just be careful with your money. It doesn't mean that I'm against taxes and getting enough money to run the government. I'm just saying that we can do it in a wise way and not stupid things like crazy things. I'd like to tell you something from today's newspaper. This is the Asbury Park Press today. Okay. And on the front page
today is September
19th. Yes.
2017.
And on the front page of the paper, the lieutenant governor is campaigning, and there's a story about something that someone told the lieutenant governor, and this is a person who was working, and her husband was working, and their child was in the military service, and the person was at a food pantry, worried that her child would find out and be embarrassed that the mother was having to go to the food pantry to get food. And so the lieutenant governor was at a meeting. And at the meeting they talked about what are they going to do about this kind of thing. Here's what they said. I'll read this as quickly as I can, but it says, "We believe there are 6 opportunities in New Jersey that will lead to $150 billion in gross domestic product and 250,000 more jobs over the next 10 years by nurturing young businesses, being creative with an infrastructure for the future, addressing workforce imbalance, tailoring incentives," and they go on. None of this has anything to do with the lady. When I was a kid, in college, young married, my wife and I we're working minimum wage jobs. We had a couple of old cars. We paid our rent. It was not always easy, but we were able to do it and pay for the cars and for the insurance on the cars and eat and pay our rent. And obviously, you can't do it anymore. Well, of course, what we need is we need a $15 minimum wage in the state, which will begin to make up for where I was when I was a kid.
How do you address businesses that are adamantly opposed to that sort of a steep wage increase and the concomitant proposition that it means cutting jobs?
That's an old argument, and it doesn't hold water. Not to be rude, but it just doesn't. If somebody has a lot of money and a Cadillac, he's not excited about saying, well, I guess I can get by with a new Chevrolet, and yes, let's have all of the employees get a big raise. It happens, but that's not usual. That's not the usual thing. The next time you drive by some house that looks so nice and it's an $850,000 house, ask yourself, could that business owner maybe have slipped by on a $600,000 house and paid a little more money to the employees? And I get, it runs away with me when we say, well, if it's a small business, like they only have 4 employees, so then we should exempt them. So the people that work for the small employer don't have to eat. They don't have to pay their insurance. They don't have to pay for their old car. What are you talking about? If we're going to have a law in the state that helps people, it should help everybody, not just some people.
All right, let's follow that along just a second, because we've spent an awful lot of time on the economy, and about all of it's valid, but you're going into another area now that opens up here, which is full-time versus part-time employment. Okay, let's say it is $15 an hour. Let's say that means fewer full-time jobs and the concomitant health coverage. Those people on part-time, and it's already happening, people in part-time positions have to pay their own insurance. Where do you see healthcare going in this scenario? Are you in favor of a government-run, government-subsidized system? Or who should be running it? The government or private insurers?
There is no rationale for doing what we're doing with insurance. There's no moral rationale for it. There's no medical rationale for it. And there's no economic rationale for it. The people that have insurance in the United States are, along with the other people in the United States, dying sooner than the people in the UK. The people in the UK pay half of what we do for insurance. It doesn't really matter whether your employer writes a check to the government for your insurance policy or whether your employer sends the money to Aetna or to Horizon. What matters is, what does it cost? Because your employer didn't get that money by a gift. Your employer got that money from the work that you did. And that work provided some money which is now sent to the insurance company. We're only talking about where it's sent. What we know is it works far better and is half the price. But the other thing is, how about living longer? How about that idea? How about a system? Should we really have a system where people don't live as long and pay more money for health care? How's that? Should we keep that? How good is that? Is that just wonderful? People, we need to stop. We just need to stop. The Revolutionary War is over. We have this thing where we don't want to do anything like Europe. We're a bunch of renegades that want to do everything our own way, and that's just fine. People with pickup trucks with flying flags, wonderful. But this is about dead babies. This is about people dying in childbirth. This is no joke. We have great research and some of the best health care on the planet. And you can get it at Rochester, Minnesota, if you have the right insurance policy, and you can get there. But it doesn't. It's not working for the country. It just doesn't.
Let's circle back around to, since you brought up kids again. That kid without the food in his stomach, and the kid who should have that school lunch. You've gotten a very significant endorsement from the American Federation of Teachers. Education is very important to you, and public education especially. Yet, charter schools continue to proliferate. There's a growing segment of the population right in your district and around it that subscribe to private schools. Both of these are in direct competition and, in many instances, sapping money out of the public education system. How do you reconcile all of these various approaches, including homeschooling, into something that works and supports public education and keeps it viable as an entity?
One day, I was sitting at my desk in the United Arab Emirates, and I was sitting right next to the window. When you work in the Middle East, you learn quickly where people are from by how they're dressed. There were about 15 people in front of the hospital there laying papers. I was sitting in my air-conditioned office looking out the window thinking, how did a poor boy from an orphanage get here? And I thought about it. And I thought about Bangladesh, where these folks were from. You know, you can get a great education in Bangladesh if you're rich, but you can't get it if you're poor. And the public education system is the difference about the United States economy. We don't have more gold, we don't have more ships, we don't have more iron ore. What we have in the United States is the public educational system, and the public education system should run from pre-K to 16. That's really what we need. And if we're going to continue to compete on the world stage, that's what we need. That's what your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren will need. And if we don't have the foresight for it now, we won't have it later when they so badly need it. We will ourselves become the country of pavers.
Would you change the system in which charter schools use public school funds?
Yes. I would campaign all over the state if I have the soapbox of having the office. I would campaign all over the state, talk to anybody that would listen about why we need the public education system that we have had for hundreds of years and how important it is for us to keep it. We can't give it up. It's the heart of the country. There's no other one thing that contributes to the country anywhere near what the public education system does.